Hello and welcome to another tutorial in the SolidWorks chess set. Today we're going to be looking at the bishop. Relatively simple piece. I feel there is some new commands in here though that we've not used before, so we're just going to take it as it comes and hopefully it won't be too difficult for you guys. So starting off, same as usual, got the same size base, same angle and everything on the feed at the bottom, so it's quite regular. It's just the top section that's different. So straight away again, we've opened a new part, just going to revolve the base again, same setup as before, mid to point the line, drawing the bottom section roughed out, so that like that. 5 for that bit, 10 for that bit, and 15 degrees for there. Okay, so that's fairly simple, standard, same as we've done before. There we go. So the whole thing this time is a 62.5 tool to the centre of the sphere at the top, and the sphere at the top has a radius of 2.5, so it's the whole thing 65 tool. So if we just make this back line 65, straight away there it's a bit bigger than we used to. Just drag this up here somewhere so we've got a reference point. So going on to here, so right at the top got a little sphere, same way we created a sphere before, little 3-point semicircle. Remember to click the center point, hold control, click the line and coincident them so they lock on. So then all you've got to do is give it a radius, which was 2.5 I believe. Yeah, there we go, 2.5. Okay. So that's all the easy bits really, nothing new there at all. The complicated bit is this central section here. Now it's not a sphere, it's slightly offset, and the way that I've achieved that is by using something called the spline tool. So what that basically allows us to do is to draw a curved line, but rather than giving it a radius, so it doesn't have to be a regular arc or anything, we basically give it a set of coordinates for the points, which is what all of these bit here is. So to do that then, up at the top here, got the spline tool, and basically how this works is you drop it in one point, and every time you click your mouse it drops a new reference point in, so it can quite happily fly around, it can do lots of multiple shapes, and when you get to the end, if you just hit escape, it will lock it to the last point you made. So you can quite quickly make very complex curves, and then by moving all the individual points it changes the shape of it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to draw a relatively simple one by comparison and then dimension all the points. So I'm going to click on the line just up here somewhere. I want, that's that first point there, I want 1, 2 and then the end point. So I want 1, 2 and then the end point clicks back onto the line. Okay, and then just hit escape. So what we're going to do there is then dimension it into place. So that end line, our start point there is 4 mil, so it's 4 mil from the top there. There we go. The next one's 9 mil from the top, so start going this side. 9, 14 and 19. Okay, so that's given us all the depths that way. Now the only other thing is this 5 mil here, so if we go from here to here, 5 mil there, and 5 mil on that one because they're the same. Now I've got 2 dimensions there. We could start using a few relations and stuff to make things a bit more tidy. So we click on that line, or that point and that point, and just hit vertical. Vertical does the same job. Okay, so we quite clearly see that that has become fully dimensioned. Got this dangling line here, so I'm just going to lock that onto there. There we go, so that's continued up at the right angle. What I can then do is I can try and clear this up a little bit, because at the moment we've broken one of the first rules really. If we've got multiple closed sketches, so what we've got is we've got our sketch, it's fully defined, but it's basically split into segments. So you've got this big segment here, a little bit here, and tiny bit here. Now, in theory, that's not too much of a problem. It's a bit irritating, and it'll make the next bit harder. So what we want to do is get rid of as many as we can. Now, when we fully dimensioned it, we could just use a little trim entities tool. Now this little arc's nice and simple, so if we just trim through the bottom here, it should cut the arc off back to that line. Now it hasn't locked it, so we're just going to drag it back around and lock it again. Okay? So that's locked onto there, so it's still fully defined, it's still happy, it's not a problem. Now if I try and trim this bit here, it all comes undefined, because that was one of our defining points. So let's not do that, let's just undo that. Okay? Let's leave it as that. It's in 3 sections, it's not too much of a problem, none of them are tiny. You want to try and keep away from little tiny sections because it just makes life difficult. So if we then end our sketch. Okay. So, axis of revolution is still going to be this back bit. We can see now when I go to click it, it doesn't do what it's done before. It's starting to highlight weird bits. So if we click this, it doesn't do what we'd normally expect. It's not really working how it should. It didn't fill out the axis of revolution. It started highlighting weird things. This thin feature section is highlighted. As basically SolidWorks is a bit confused because it doesn't know which bits we want to work with. So first off, untick thin feature, because basically that's just a tool for allowing you to draw a line and revolve it. It doesn't work brilliantly unless you know exactly what you're doing. We'll talk about it in a later video. Selected contours. Let's clear this because we don't want the sketch, because obviously the sketch is too confusing for it. What we're going to do is we're going to select areas. So I'm going to highlight this area. You can see there, region 1. Click there, region 2, and then just click in the last one. This is why you don't want any small sections, because the more sections you have, the harder it is to do. The smaller they are, the harder they are to get hold of, etc. So we've got our 3 regions. Axis of revolution, click back in the box, click on the line, it's now worked happy as Larry. Stick it. There we go. So now we've got our base overall shape. Now the last bit for this is obviously this cutout here. Now as we said in the past, doing cutouts on curved surfaces is quite difficult, but it can still be done. So looking at this, we can't really select on the edge, we're going to have to select on a plane. So we're going to look for our planes that run through it. So I'm going to select the right plane this time, go normal to it. Now remember, you have to have the plane selected before you hit extrude cut, because it makes life easy. If you haven't got it selected beforehand, I'll show you what happens. So if we hit extrude cut, we now want to select the right plane. Obviously it's disappeared. We can expand this and we can hit right plane there. Doesn't matter too much either way, it's just easier to select it first. Now what we want to do is we basically draw this square at an angle, which becomes a little bit complicated because we can't just use our regular rectangle tool. We could use one of these ones here though. So let's use our 3-point corner rectangle. Before I do that, just to make my life easy, I'm going to drop a centre line in. And you'll see why in a second, just because it makes referencing later on a little bit more easy. So we've got a centre line up the middle, it's fully defined because I've done origin to top. And now I'm going to do a 3-point corner rectangle. So I'm going to select 1 point, 2 points, 3 points. Okay. Now I've deliberately gone too big, I've gone out the edge. I'll show you why in a second. So, got our rectangle. Nice simple sizes. It's 2mm that way. That is at a 45-degree angle. That's basically what we're told about it. So it's 2mm there. Now this is why we've thrown our centre line in, because our centre line is fully defined. We can then dimension off it at an angle without it moving. It will just move our rectangle quite happily. So let's put that 45 in. Now the last dimension there is it's 6mm from the tip of the corner that's touching the centre line down to the neck. So you've got the neck here, that point there, and that wants to be 6mm. Okay, there you go. So that's fully defined. All this bit hasn't defined the end bit yet. Now you could, in theory, drag this down and just attach it to the edge there. I always worry about that because it's going to start throwing up 0 errors and this kind of thing. So sometimes it's better just to leave it so it cuts outside of the object. So it's a little bit tricky on this one, try to get the right angle. There we go. So as long as you've made it bigger than it needs to be, it doesn't matter too much. So I'm just going to round that down to 7. There you go. It's fully defined. It does go outside the object, but that doesn't matter. If it's cutting thin air, it's cutting thin air. As long as it's cutting through the body, it's all good. So we're going to end our sketch. Now we've got extrude cut already selected, and it's gone out just that one side. Now we can do through both, and that takes it out both directions. It's cutting through the entire object. Just tick it. There we go. And then we have our fully finished bishop with our little cutout. Now, not too complicated, but there are some new tools in there, so if you need to do it again, just run through it just so you know what you're doing. Okay. So thank you for watching. We will continue this on in the next video.